Ladies and gentlemen, we often think cheating starts in bedrooms, but more often it starts in conversations, not physical betrayal, but emotional, quiet, hidden, and dangerously underestimated. An emotional affair is when someone outside your relationship becomes your emotional priority. It starts innocently, texts, venting, sharing your day, but slowly you give someone else what should belong to your partner, your attention, your thoughts, your heart. And the scariest part, it doesn't feel like cheating. It feels like connection, like someone finally understands you, but if you're hiding conversations, erasing messages, or saying it's not what it looks like, deep down you know something's wrong. Emotional affairs hurt just as deeply, sometimes more, than physical ones. They break trust silently. There's no lipstick on a collar, no late night rendezvous, just a growing emptiness in your relationship. You feel replaced without proof, unchosen without closure. We must stop pretending emotional affairs are harmless. They are betrayals of emotional loyalty, and most don't happen by accident. They happen through emotional neglect at home. When we stop listening, stop asking, stop caring, that's when someone else becomes interesting, not better, just more present. So, how do we stop it before it starts? Be honest with yourself. Are you turning to someone else for validation, comfort, or excitement? Set boundaries. Emotional intimacy with anyone outside your relationship must be guarded. Reconnect, bring back curiosity, talk not just about tasks, but about fears, dreams, feelings. Keep your emotional world open to your partner first, because relationships don't collapse overnight, they erode quietly. Through neglect, through silence, through connections we never meant to build elsewhere. Don't wait until your partner says, I feel like I lost you long before you left. Decode the emotional affair before it's too late. An emotional affair often starts with what seems like an innocent connection. It could be a coworker, an old friend, or someone you regularly interact with online. The interactions usually begin casually, simple conversations, laughter, mutual understanding. There's no intention to betray, no desire to harm your relationship, but what happens next is subtle and often unconscious. You start sharing more about your day with this person. You begin turning to them when you're upset, excited, or need to vent. Over time, they become your emotional outlet, and in many cases, this slow shift happens because there's already a gap in your primary relationship. Maybe communication has faded. Maybe your emotional needs aren't being fully met. You feel unheard, unseen, or disconnected. Instead of addressing it directly, you gravitate towards someone who makes you feel understood again. That's the foundation of an emotional affair. It builds on emotional neglect. Not always intentional neglect, but neglect that grows from routine, stress, unresolved tension, or simply being too busy to notice. When you no longer prioritize emotional connection with your partner, someone else can quietly slip into that space. Not because they're more attractive or more compatible, but because they're present, because they're listening, because you feel emotionally alive in their presence in a way you haven't felt at home in a while. Most emotional affairs don't start with flirtation or seduction. They start with emotional vulnerability and the comfort of being seen by someone new. And when that connection deepens without boundaries or awareness, you may find yourself emotionally bonded to someone who isn't your partner. The lines blur, and even though there's no physical intimacy, there's an emotional intimacy that feels just as real, just as strong, and just as dangerous to your relationship as any physical affair. Might be sharing emotional intimacy outside your relationship is often overlooked because there's no physical contact, but it can be just as damaging. Emotional betrayal begins when you start turning to someone else for the things your partner should be part of, your fears, your dreams, your struggles, your day-to-day emotions. It's not about having a friend or a support system. It's about the depth of what you share and the intimacy created through that sharing. When that emotional space, once reserved for your partner, is gradually handed over to someone else, something essential begins to shift in the foundation of your relationship. People often justify emotional affairs with statements like, we're just talking, or they just understand me. But that's where the danger lies. Emotional affairs often feel harmless because there's no physical proof of betrayal. However, the emotional energy, attention, and affection that should be invested in your partner is now being given to someone else. It's not just the words being shared, it's the connection, the bond, the emotional loyalty being redirected away from the relationship. This kind of emotional transfer often creates confusion, guilt, and defensiveness. You may find yourself hiding messages, deleting conversations, or avoiding certain topics, not because of what you did physically, but because of how emotionally attached you've become. That secrecy itself becomes a red flag. If the connection is so innocent, why hide it? Why feel conflicted about it? Why go out of your way to downplay it? The truth is, emotional cheating creates a rupture that's deeply personal. It creates a void of trust, even if nothing physical has happened. Your partner might not be able to explain it, but they'll feel it. They'll sense the absence, the shift, the withdrawal. Emotional betrayal is often invisible to the world, but it's painfully obvious to the one who's being replaced. Emotional affairs are especially dangerous because they rarely feel like cheating in the beginning. They feel like understanding, comfort, and connection. You find someone who listens to you, who gets you in a way that feels refreshing, and before long, you're drawn to that feeling more and more. It doesn't come with guilt or shame at first, because it doesn't seem like you're doing anything wrong. You're not crossing any physical boundaries. You're just talking, laughing, confiding. But that's what makes it so hard to recognize. Because emotional cheating wears the mask of friendship, it usually starts during a time when your primary relationship feels dry, distant, or full of tension. You're not necessarily looking to cheat, but you're longing to feel emotionally seen again. You start sharing things with someone else that you haven't shared with your partner in weeks, maybe months. You feel a rush of energy when they message you. You think about them during the day. You notice the emotional high you get from the interaction and start to crave it more often. The more you talk to them, the less you open up to your partner. The more emotionally bonded you feel with this new person, the more emotionally unavailable you become at home. What makes emotional cheating so difficult to admit is that society often doesn't recognize it as cheating. There's no physical evidence, no scandalous proof, just a growing emotional investment that no one sees but you. You justify it by saying, "We're just close," or "They're a great friend," even though you know in your heart that if your partner had the same closeness with someone else, it would deeply hurt you. Emotional affairs don't feel wrong until the damage is already done, until the connection becomes something you feel the need to protect, explain, or hide. Boundaries and honest self-reflection are the two most powerful tools when it comes to preventing emotional affairs. Most people don't wake up one day and decide to emotionally cheat. It happens gradually through unspoken attachments and unchecked interactions. This is why self-awareness is key. You have to be willing to ask yourself difficult questions about your intentions, your emotional needs, and your behavior. Are you seeking validation outside your relationship because you're not addressing your own dissatisfaction within it? Are you being emotionally honest with your partner, or are you investing that honesty in someone else who feels easier to talk to? One of the clearest indicators that a boundary is being crossed is secrecy. If you're deleting messages, changing names in your contact list, or avoiding certain topics with your partner, you've already stepped into dangerous territory. True friendships don't require secrecy. Emotional honesty means facing the discomfort of what you're doing instead of hiding behind vague excuses like "they're just a friend." It also means being honest about how those conversations make you feel. If your heart races when their name pops up, if you're sharing things with them you haven't shared with your partner, or if they've become the first person you want to talk to when something happens, you need to check in with yourself. Boundaries don't exist to limit freedom. They exist to protect connection. That means deciding what kind of conversations are okay and which ones are too intimate. It means limiting alone time with someone you're drawn to, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you respect what you've built with your partner. It also means regularly checking in with your own motives, asking yourself why this person has become so emotionally important to you, and what you're trying to escape, ignore, or avoid in your relationship by turning elsewhere. Rebuilding emotional intimacy requires more than apologies or promises. It demands presence, consistency, and intentional effort over time. When an emotional affair has happened or emotional disconnection has grown, the road back to closeness is not instant. It starts with acknowledging what was lost and recognizing that intimacy isn't just physical touch or time spent together. It's about being emotionally available, emotionally honest, and emotionally invested. Many couples drift apart not because of big fights, but because of small moments of neglect, missed opportunities to ask how the other person really feels, to sit and truly listen. To express love without conditions. Reconnection requires both partners to lean in, even when it feels awkward or unfamiliar. It means setting aside distractions, prioritizing time together, and creating space where both people feel safe to speak without fear of being judged or dismissed. Emotional intimacy is not built through grand gestures, but through small, consistent acts of attention and care. It's in remembering what matters to the other person. It's in expressing appreciation, being curious, and showing up even when it's easier to shut down. For those who have experienced the pain of emotional betrayal, healing requires transparency. It's about rebuilding trust by being open, not defensive, being willing to answer questions, being patient with the hurt. And for the one who's been hurt, it also means being willing to work through the pain, not to forget it, but to understand it, process it, and slowly let the walls down again. Emotional intimacy can be rebuilt, but it has to be rebuilt together, with empathy, with mutual accountability, and with a shared commitment to not just stay in the relationship, but to actually show up in it fully. The process is gradual. There's no shortcut, but with effort, relationships can be restored to a deeper, more conscious kind of love.